Sometimes you just have to hold on to any kind of hope to survive.
A soft-spoken but grown-up voice, one you're hearing for the very first time, telling the story that never should have happened. Taken by this man, Philip Garrido.
My world changed in an instant. I heard the driver say, "I can't believe we got away with it." And he started laughing.
June 10th, 1991, South Lake Tahoe, California. It was a bright Monday morning. 11-year-old Jaycee Dugard, shy smile, blonde hair, pink jacket, walked up her driveway toward the school bus stop. It was supposed to be just another ordinary day. She waved goodbye to her stepfather, Carl Probin, who stood watching from the garage. Her backpack bounced with every step. The birds chirped. The world turned. Life moved on. But then, in a moment that still echoes like a gunshot in history, everything stopped. A gray sedan slowed near her. Jaycee turned her head, confused. Two strangers were inside, and then screeching tires, a jolt, a flash of panic. A hand grabbed her. She was tased. Her small body hit the floor of the car. Carl sprinted toward her, but he was too late. Jaycee was gone, taken in broad daylight, right in front of her own home, without a trace. The community went into instant chaos. Helicopters buzzed the skies. Police canvassed neighborhoods. Amber Alert bulletins blared across TVs and radios. Carl, haunted and breathless, described the vehicle and the man behind the wheel to every officer he could find. Her mother, Terry, collapsed to the floor when she heard. She had kissed her daughter goodbye not even 10 minutes earlier. Hours turned to days, days into weeks, months dragged into years, and still nothing. No body, no clues, no hope. But Jaycee was alive, and her nightmare was only just beginning. The trunk of the car slammed shut, and Jaycee Dugard disappeared from the world, but not into darkness, into something worse. She woke up groggy, dizzy. Her head was spinning. She couldn't move her arms. Her wrists were bound. The first face she saw belonged to a woman, blonde, cold. She offered no kindness, no warmth, only silence and averted eyes. Then came the man, middle-aged, stocky, eyes that smiled but didn't mean it. This was Philip Garrido, a convicted sex offender, and now her captor. Jaycee was led through a yard and into a structure that didn't look like it belonged on Earth. It wasn't a room, not really. It was a collection of tents and soundproof sheds, hidden behind towering fences and trees in the backyard of Garrido's home in Antioch, California. There were no windows, no clocks, no escape. This was her world now, and no one outside even knew it existed. For the first days, Jaycee was numb, crying until there were no more tears, whispering for her mom, for help, for anything. No one came. She was forced to sleep on a cot, eat what she was given, obey every order. The man, the monster, told her he loved her, that he had chosen her, that she was special. He gave her a new name, Alyssa, and the more he called her by it, the more it began to eat away at who she truly was. Jaycee Dugard started to fade. Her identity wasn't taken in one moment. It was stripped away, piece by piece. Over the months, Garrido's obsession turned darker. He began introducing her to strange voices he said spoke through him, told her they had a mission together, that she was meant to stay. He kept her inside those tents for entire years, telling her the outside world was dangerous, that her family had forgotten her. It was psychological warfare, every single day. And then just 2 years after she vanished, Jaycee, still just 13, was told she was pregnant. She didn't even fully understand what that meant. And yet in that filthy backyard under a tarp, without doctors or medication, Jaycee gave birth to a daughter. And then just 3 years later, another one. But here's the most unthinkable part. Jaycee didn't give up. She didn't shut down. Even in hell, she became a mother. She taught her daughters to read using old encyclopedias. She raised them on whispered fairy tales and hope. But always always with the fear that they too were prisoners. The girls were told Jaycee was their sister. They called Garrido Dad. They didn't know a world beyond the backyard until one day the outside world came knocking, and the lie, after 18 years, finally began to crack. It was August 24, 2009, 18 years after Jaycee Lee Dugard had been erased from the world. At the University of California, Berkeley, a security officer was on routine patrol when something off caught her attention. A man was handing out religious flyers. With him were two young girls. They looked strange, not unkempt exactly, but off, like they hadn't been raised in normal society. Their mannerisms were robotic. Their eyes darted nervously, and when spoken to, they let the man do all the talking. That man was Philip Garrido. To the officer, his words were all over the place, erratic, fast-talking, babbling about religion and missions and voices from God. He insisted he had an appointment with a university group. He didn't. She checked. Something didn't sit right, and that gut feeling, it saved a life. Garrido was told to return the next day for a meeting with his parole officer. He did, but this time, he brought everyone. His wife, the girls, and her, Jaycee, except she didn't say her name was Jaycee. She called herself Alyssa. She had lived as Alyssa for so long she couldn't even remember her real birthday. She spoke in circles, vague and unsure, like someone who hadn't talked freely in years. The agents listening were trained to notice discomfort, trauma, programming. They asked her again, gently, "Who are you really?" She paused, and then she said it. "I'm Jaycee." Just like that. 18 years of silence ended in a whisper. She was 29. She had been missing since she was 11. She had given birth to 2 daughters while in captivity, and no one had known. Back at the Dugard home in South Lake Tahoe, Jaycee's mother, Terry, received a phone call she never expected. "I think we've found your daughter." Terry dropped the phone. She had long feared Jaycee was dead, or worse. But in a twist that felt like a movie, Jaycee was alive, broken, but breathing, changed, but still her. Within 24 hours, the headlines exploded. Breaking: kidnapped California girl found after 18 years. The name Jaycee Lee Dugard raced around the world. The backyard in Antioch was swarmed with federal agents. People stood outside in tears, some holding signs that read, "Welcome home, Jaycee." And yet the world would soon learn, rescue was only the beginning. The damage ran deep, the healing would take longer, but Jaycee had survived the impossible, and now, her voice would finally be heard. When Jaycee Lee Dugard re-entered the world in 2009, she didn't walk out of a cage and into peace. No, she stepped into a storm. Because what had happened to her, what had been allowed to happen for nearly 2 decades, wasn't just the fault of a monster. It was the failure of an entire system. As the world fixated on the house in Antioch, California, investigators peeled back the layers of an unthinkable truth. Jaycee had been kept in a tent compound, a backyard labyrinth of tarps, sheds, and makeshift rooms invisible from the street. A place where sound couldn't escape, a prison with no bars. She'd lived under constant threat, subjected to routine abuse, deprived of any contact with the outside world. She hadn't seen a doctor in 18 years, no school, no friends, no freedom, and the worst part, she had given birth to 2 daughters, in that very yard, with no medical assistance. Her captor, Philip Garrido, had fathered them, but here's the twist. Authorities had been there before, more than once. Neighbors had called in suspicious activity. Parole officers had done check-ins. Even campus police at UC Berkeley had interacted with Garrido over the years. Nobody connected the dots. The tent city, hidden. Jaycee's true identity, unknown. And yet, she'd been just 30 feet from freedom for nearly 2 decades. When the news broke, Terry Probin, Jaycee's mother, rushed to meet her daughter for the first time in 18 years. What she found was not the little girl who had vanished, but a grown woman, cautious and soft-spoken, standing beside two teenage girls who called her mom. Imagine it, seeing your missing daughter again, and realizing she's also someone else's mother. Terry didn't flinch. She embraced Jaycee, she embraced the girls. There were tears, there was silence, but there was no judgment, only love. Meanwhile, Garrido and his wife Nancy were arrested and charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, rape, false imprisonment, and more. Their home was dubbed the backyard of horrors. Court proceedings revealed diary entries written by Jaycee, chronicling her confusion, despair, and isolation. One entry read, "I don't know how I can ever tell anyone. I'm too scared, too ashamed." But she did. She told the world. In 2011, Philip Garrido was sentenced to 431 years to life in prison. Nancy received 36 years to life. It wasn't justice in the full sense. Nothing could return those stolen years, but it was closure. And Jaycee, she chose not to vanish again. She stepped forward, bravely, publicly. She founded the Jaycee Foundation, dedicated to helping families heal from abduction and trauma. She published a memoir, A Stolen Life, which became a bestseller. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, she started making choices for herself. What to wear, where to go, who to be. She began to live. But healing, that's not a straight line. In interviews, Jaycee admitted to moments of guilt, confusion, even sympathy for her captors. It's a common thread among long-term survivors, the result of psychological manipulation, trauma bonding, and total isolation. Yet through it all, she kept moving forward. Her daughters, now adults, have chosen to remain out of the spotlight, but they're thriving, in no small part because Jaycee gave them something she was never given: safety. The scars remain, but so does her strength. Jaycee Lee Dugard didn't just survive a monster, she survived 18 years of silence, and now, she speaks. When Jaycee Dugard first stepped back into the sunlight of freedom in August 2009, the world looked different. Faster, louder, more connected. But she had changed more than the world had. For most people, 18 years is a lifetime. For Jaycee, it was captivity, a suspended reality where time didn't heal, but hardened, where every sunrise meant survival, and every sunset another day inside someone else's nightmare. But in the chapters that followed, Jaycee turned her pain into power. No longer a missing person, no longer a prisoner. Jaycee became a voice. Her first bold move, she said her own name. "My name is Jaycee Lee Dugard. I want to tell you my story." And she did, in A Stolen Life, her haunting, unfiltered memoir. In it, she didn't hide the ugly parts. She didn't sanitize the past. She wrote about giving birth alone in a backyard, about learning to parent in secret, about raising 2 children while being controlled by the man who kidnapped her. But she also wrote about hope, about the power of a mother's love, both her own for her daughters, and her mother Terry's relentless search for her missing girl. And then Jaycee got louder. She founded the Jaycee Foundation, not just to help survivors, but to educate law enforcement, schools, and communities on the warning signs and the aftershocks of trauma. She advocated for victims of long-term abduction, an often overlooked and misunderstood experience. She worked with therapists, law enforcement, and other survivors to reshape how the justice system interacts with trauma victims. She wasn't just healing, she was leading. But make no mistake, the scars didn't vanish. In an interview with Diane Sawyer, Jaycee described the complex feelings of being free. You don't know how to feel. You're free, but you're terrified. You can leave, but where do you go? Who do you trust? That vulnerability, that honesty, drew people to her. She wasn't some tragic headline anymore. She was real. Jaycee learned how to drive, got her first cell phone, went horseback riding, took trips with her daughters. She started to laugh again. She started to live, but she never tried to pretend the past didn't happen. She brought it with her, on her terms, and in doing so she reminded the world that survivors aren't broken, they're reborn. So where is Jaycee Dugard today? Living privately, quietly, but not silently. She occasionally speaks at events, still runs the Jaycee Foundation, and continues to advocate behind the scenes. Her daughters, now grown, live with the legacy of their beginnings, but also with the love of a mother who fought like hell to protect them from inside a nightmare. And that's the most powerful thing of all. Jaycee didn't escape alone. She escaped with 2 lives in her arms and built a future from ruin. What do we learn from Jaycee's story? That evil can hide in plain sight, that systems fail, sometimes catastrophically, but also that the human spirit is unimaginably resilient, that a girl once silenced in a backyard shed can rise, speak, and change the world, that survival isn't the end, it's the beginning. Don't just watch, respond. Like this story so it doesn't get buried. Share it with someone who still believes the truth matters. Subscribe to uncover more stories that demand to be told, because every survivor deserves to be more than a headline. They deserve to be heard.